Hey,
I've
Dad
always
worked for Nestle. Dad worked for Nestle, mate. The free Kit Kat today didn't really work too well.
This is potentially the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. And that's saying something because I've been some stupid stuff in my history.
For me, what was the most rewarding, just learning, taking stuff out of them, and also being given the platform to be able to stand up and represent people of my time.
The only way really to keep poverty above at all is through education, and I probably didn't realise until I went there.
They should back you. It's water cooler weekly. I mean, it's a big deal.
Usually when I start these episodes, I introduce the person, but today I'm going to get you to introduce yourself.
Okay, I can do that.
So Nick Bloom, who are you?
Who am I? Deep question.
Straight away.
I am a human being. I'm a man.
Yeah.
Family man.
Yeah.
Man of the people.
Yeah.
I don't know how to introduce myself. I mean, professionally, that's probably one place I'd go to. I work in anti-bullying, youth empowerment, and mental health.
Yeah.
As a presenter, facilitator, speaker, instructor.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of in that education sphere. But that's been a pretty recent change. So it's a new part of my identity.
It's a new part of the man.
New part of the man.
Yeah.
The man that is Nick Bloom.
Yeah, the man that is Nick Bloom. The old part of the man, Nick Bloom, which is how we know each other. We used to work together at Sportsbet as traders.
Yeah.
We sort of touched on this before, how it's not like you go to uni and then go, I want to do this. Everyone has a really different path into that job. So what was the path like for you?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was a non-path path. So grew up really loving sport. So like that sport basically meant everything to me. This doesn't really feel directly part of it, but kind of is. My parents divorced when I was very young, and sport became such a key part of my life and a real connection point to my dad.
Yeah.
So it was really important to me in that sense. It was also important to me growing up in school. If I was bullied or left out or didn't have friends, like I could always turn to sport. I could watch sport and it was like an extra parent, or I could play sport and it would help me make friends. I'd learn physical capabilities about myself, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up, sport was a really significant thing.
Yeah.
As I entered my like preteen years, I was like quite good at maths, quite good with numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was a pretty natural, strong area for me.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of weak areas, but that was a strong one. And
how'd you go with the sporting side of things? Was that a weak area, or was it?
As an athlete?
Because I was weak as an athlete and I was weak with numbers. So sport was massive for me as well, but I was just awful at every component.
Right. The way I would answer that is they say if you can't play coach, if you can't coach, get into administration. I probably wasn't even that. Like I was like, I had the mind for it.
Yeah.
And I had decent hand-eye coordination, but I had a lack of courage, lack of discipline. And I was a bit of a late bloomer as well.
Is that a play on words?
It wasn't deliberate. So yeah, I had the mind for it. I loved it. Like I had a good sport IQ. That's what I'd like to say. I had a good sport IQ. Probably that's just pie in the sky stuff and isn't true, but I'd like to think I did. And I was definitely on that side of not being physically gifted. And later in my life, that's why I've always liked the little guy in sport. Like I've liked the little nuggety, gritty player who's got no athletic prowess or natural ability. They just like squeeze everything out of themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm not really that guy either, but I like that they are.
Do you think that's an Australian thing? Because I'm the exact same way. Like to use an actual example, a golfer named Cam Percy, who he's on the PGA Tour. He's sort of been like floating around for a few years, but like I don't think he started playing golf until he was like in his teens, and made his way onto the PGA Tour at like late 30s, early 40s, and has just like had to just grind for every bit of success. But he's like, he's making a living, and like I love seeing that as opposed to like don't get me wrong, I love Nick Kyrgios, but like you know how like you have your Nick Kyrgios and your Wayne Arthurs.
Yeah.
Like I do love me like a good Wayne Arthurs story or like a Scott Draper.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that.
Yeah.
I find it difficult to see like a gifted athlete that is right on the precipice of like being elite or a world champion and just they block themselves from getting there.
Yeah.
They have all of the capabilities and natural gifts and they don't allow themselves to get there. And I'm just like, maybe if I had that, I could have been that guy.
Well, the good thing is I would just block myself like anyway, regardless of whether I had the talent. Like,
Yeah.
I know this is like a super segue, but it's interesting. Like,
Go with it.
do you ever like, do you like tennis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever find yourself like, because I find myself watching like an epic 5-setter or something in like the Australian Open, and my mind is just thinking like, what's going through their head right now? Or an even weirder thought that I have is when they take like a toilet break, like time out, like they've gone off the court and they're just literally in a cubicle, just sitting there for a moment. Like, what's going on in their head at that moment? Like, that must be weird.
Yeah.
No?
It must be, yeah. Well, I don't know. People would use heaps of different techniques.
Yeah.
They could be blank. They could be just saying like, I'm the best.
Yeah.
You know, just like pumping themselves up. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's why I'm so fascinated. In like,
What do you think you'd do in that spot?
I just think if I was like in the middle of like a Grand Slam match and I've just come off, like I've just come out of the court, like straight into the toilet, I'm just like, it would be hard for me to like switch off and then switch back on. So I would be thinking like, you know, got to get rid of that double-handed backhand because single-handed backhand looks better. You know, attack his backhand serve. I would be still locked in. But that's just me. A man who has one of the weirdest thought when watching a Grand Slam tennis match, apparently.
That's very niche thinking. I like it.
That's completely fine. Look, all the stuff that you touched on now that you're sort of doing around the bullying and the mental health side, incredible stuff. And it's a massive shift if you look at it from someone who's sort of, you know, grown up as playing sport and, you know, sort of always being attached to sport. I've been through that myself where I've sort of detached myself from the whole sporting thing just because it's difficult, but sometimes it's necessary. So I guess the question is, you know, what was it sort of that, you know, pushed you to sort of making a shift out of that, you know, the sporting field and sort of into the stuff that you're in now?
Yeah. So I can answer that by kind of tracking back in time through my childhood. So sport was obviously a really significant thing in my childhood for me.
Yeah.
Another thing that was coming into like my subtle awareness was like my mum and different struggles she was having with her health and well-being. So she had a variety of different challenges growing up. She still has some now, but she's in a really good place.
Yeah.
And there was something in the back of my head that was like tickling this curiosity in me about mental health. And I didn't have the term mental health at the time because it wasn't spoken about in that way 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But there was something there. There was like a little nuance in the back of my mind. Skip forward to very late teens, early 20s, and I became friends with someone. We became really good friends, and she became like this mix of like my pseudo-sister, pseudo-girlfriend. It was just like I was one of the boys, but she became like a really tight mate.
Yeah.
Which was very strange for me at the time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I came to learn that things weren't exactly as they appeared when we first met. She also had a complex range of mental health issues, and it kind of like took me back to my childhood and like just witnessing and just being part of some of the issues that my mum had. And yeah, that was a pretty like challenging journey to not know exactly what to do to help my friend because I just wanted her to be okay and I wanted to be there for her.
Yeah.
And throughout my 20s, there were, you know, shared experiences where she had struggles and she had battles. And yeah, there was just something in my awareness that was like, I should be learning about this space. Like I can help people in this space. Maybe I can work in this space. Maybe I can make a career in life out of doing this.
Yeah.
But I'd never had the courage to pull the trigger and actually do it. So I stuck within the sporting world. I stuck with what I was comfortable doing, what was easy for me, what was natural, what I was established in. Then skip forward to the middle of 2020, peak COVID time, which is actually unrelated to what I'm about to say, but everything came to a head with my friend, and she decided to take her own life. And yeah, that's a really, really heavy experience to go through. Something you can't, well, I couldn't prepare for. I couldn't know how I would deal with it. I had never dealt with anything like that. So it's a very overwhelming mixed bag of emotions and feelings for an extended period. And even still now, it's still with me.
Doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't. And so from there, like the analogy that I use is like my mother growing up, and the things that went on there was this feather that tickled a curiosity in me. Witnessing my friends' battles was like feather bricks. It's like a brick that was knocking me over the head. Like, Nick, you need to learn about mental health.
Yeah.
You can do something with this. And then her passing was this truck that collided into me and was like a calling.
You found that courage that you sort of touched on that you didn't feel you had.
Yeah, it was kind of there a little bit, but I wasn't willing to tap into it. But then very soon after her passing, I just felt this internal calling, like, I need to carry on her legacy. I need to do something meaningful in this space, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And it hadn't crystallized in my mind what it was, but that's like slowly started to play out across the last year or so. And actually in the build up to that, like I've done a lot of work, which maybe we can touch on later, different courses, workshops, mentors, whatever. But yeah, a lot of that stuff started to crystallize and manifest in the last year to lead me where I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's it is sort of not difficult for me to hear, but I had a very similar experience in my childhood, and my own mother, had a extremely tough upbringing, and stuff that she experienced and her siblings experienced, that if I try and put myself in their shoes and her shoes specifically, and I'm like, I couldn't do that, and it's upsetting in a way that mental health has sort of taken so long to get there, because, I often think back to, what my mum, must have been going through when the stigma of mental health was, so just almost, it's weak to talk or whatnot, and just sort of how hard that must have been, for her. And you never want to see someone, especially, someone from family, but especially someone that you've formed this relationship with and you've seen them battle through, ultimately, take their own life. And a lot of people, I feel like, have experienced a situation like that, probably aren't, don't sort of spring into action, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They sort of process it in a different way, and they won't actually go ahead. And the fact that you've actually, sort of gone, I know I've had to do this for a while, but now there's almost no option. Like, I have to do it. I've got to get into it, because I feel like I can make a difference. And I wonder how many people like think, like, say they're a tradie or whatnot, they go, I could be really good in this, but for whatever reason, financial, comfort, whatever, they don't actually act on that. And especially when it's mental health, if someone can actually recognize that, shit, I might actually have a good grasp on this, and I might be able to actually impact more people in a positive way than I do in whatever job I'm doing now.
Yeah.
For those people to actually acknowledge that and then go out and do it, it's an absolutely huge thing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think the one thing I'd want to say to that at the start is, like, I don't want to put myself on a pedestal as though I'm doing something so noble, because for me it really just feels like I have to do it. It was just this calling, this internal calling. Like, I knew, like, what I'm doing is not right, and what I want to be doing is, like, right in front of me if I want to take it. Like, sadly, from a professional point of view, there's a lot of work and a lot of demand in the mental health space, in the anti-bullying space, in these kind of youth empowerment spaces, although that's a bit more of a positive one. But yeah, mental health and anti-bullying, like, there's demand there because a lot of people are struggling, and these conversations have come to the fore and they're now accepted. Yeah. There is stigma, but there's a lot less. Like, people are very comfortable to talk about the battles and the struggles that they're facing and how they want to combat that. So I feel lucky that the timing has worked out for me to enter into a growing space from a professional point of view. But personally, I'd love to work my way out of a job. Like, I'm devastated that I feel called to do this, and I'm devastated for the reason I'm doing it.
Yeah.
But it's bittersweet if I flip it on its head, because it's
really
given
is,
me
isn't it?
my why. Like, I've got a huge why as to why I want to do this.
Yeah.
And that's going to keep pushing me forward through those challenges.
Yeah, one of the things I always think about from a male's perspective at, you know, sort of this 30s to, you know, early 30s, late 20s kind of an age range is how many people do struggle with that, you know, that why. I feel like at this age, a lot of people can sort of get a little bit, I wouldn't say content with the work they're in or their situation, and it sort of becomes you become into like a bit of a rut, and you don't necessarily have that why. Like, it's not like we're, say, 19 years old and we can just like, you know, just jump out of a job we've got at Nando's while we're at uni and into like something else. I got fired from Nando's, FYI, but it's unrelated. It's interesting. Like as time goes on, you have more financial constraints and, you know, expectations, I guess, and you can kind of just almost put that why, like, what's my why? Just go, nah, I'm 30, whatever. I got to do this. I got to pay the rent. I got to pay that. And it's just, I wonder if it's difficult for a lot of people, because I know it's difficult for me.
Yeah. Oh, it's absolutely difficult. Like, in one way, I've been like gifted with this calling and this why, which can help to shape my professional path and my life. And that's a really big positive. But it's a double-edged sword. Like, it's come about for like a really tragic and devastating reason. So yeah, in one way I'm blessed to have it, in another way I'm not. The way that I see it, though, is like, what happened, and I can't stop that, and I can't control that, and I can't do anything about that. But what I can do is I can control how I react to it and what I do with that.
Yeah.
I can't turn back the clock and change what happened now, and I can't live in the past.
Yeah.
And as hard as it is for me to find a way to move forward, it's not as though I'm moving on from it or I'm forgetting it, but I'm still remembering, and I'm still holding on to the memories I have to keep like pushing me forward.
Yeah.
And at times, you know, I struggle with that, and I have my moments and I'm not perfect with it, but overall that's kind of the direction I'm trying to head in.
Yeah.
Not just being positive for the sake of being positive, but just finding some sort of silver lining or meaning or purpose that I can drive from that position.
One of the things I love talking about is the like cycle effect. Like, I guess, so sure, unfortunately you can't change what's happened, but you're now in the position where you're dealing with people who are at sometimes almost at the pretty close to the rock bottom. But what you do to that person can ultimately have an unbelievable, you know, cycle effect, and you don't know the ramifications or, you know, just how effective that could be. Like, you know, you could pick someone up, they all of a sudden go out and they go through a similar thing. Like, you know, they go out and they go, shit, I want to help people now. And so that person goes out, and it might not be in the same space, but, you know, they go out and they speak to, you know, 2 or 3 people who really take something out of, you know, their story. And then you've literally got, you know, it's a runaway train at that point.
Yeah, no, it's like a chain reaction theory, and like tiny little micro things I can do in my life to impact people. And if I flip it on its head, I can think back in my childhood, in my life, things where people have said a tiny thing or done a tiny thing, and it's been so easy for them, but it's meant so much to me. And then it's caused a change within me, and it's had this ripple effect out to all these other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really powerful and beautiful at the same time that I can do that in my work, and I can dedicate it to my friend, and I don't even see the change that I'm creating in the world.
Yeah.
I have no idea when I speak to a young person about bullying what that might bring up for them, or some experience they have, or maybe they can relate to me in some way, and that can completely change them. And I'm not doing that work. I'm just helping. I'm delivering the content to them like a vessel, and they're doing all the work, and they're working it out.
Yeah.
And I'm helping to facilitate them to do that.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
It is, and I wonder how much easier that information is retained when it's, say, being delivered by someone, as opposed to, say, me jumping on a laptop and like researching it. When you're, you know, it almost gives it like the human effect. Like it could be literally the exact same script, but you're probably so much more likely to retain it when, you know, you're delivering it rather than me just going on WebMD and finding out if, you know, what's wrong with me.
I think there's a real power to lived experience and storytelling and like the way that you can transmit information that way. So like, let's say me, I've gone through something, and then when I'm with someone else and they've gone through something, I have a level of empathy and understanding for them.
Yeah.
And that creates like a real power of connection as opposed to just reading it online or taking it as secondhand, third-hand information, like seeing it in the flesh, person to person. Like I know for me, that's when people have had a profound impact on me. If I'm like, cool, we've had a similar experience, we've had a shared experience, we have a common understanding, I can connect with them and understand what they're saying, as opposed to someone who might just be really academic or they have a clinical background. But and it's actually an interesting point because that's something I've kind of struggled with within myself because I haven't had a mental health illness.
Yeah.
So me going out to schools or workplaces and speaking about this stuff and speaking about my experiences through my mother and my friend, I've had a level of imposter syndrome about it, thinking it's so powerful when people share their experience of like a mental health illness to other people with it. I haven't had it though. Yeah. And it's taken a lot of work and a lot of time for me to come around and realize there's actually a lot of power to transmitting my story as like a family member, friend, carer.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, the stats say 1 in 5 Australians have like a mental health illness. So even if I haven't had one, even if you haven't had one, we're going to know someone who's had one.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a really significant impact on someone in our lives who is battling with that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I'm still working on that imposter syndrome a little bit, but I'm starting to, instead of coming full circle, I'm like halfway across the sphere towards it.
Yeah.
So I'm coming into myself with that a bit, which is nice.
This is completely unrelated, but
Please.
I remember like because of the hours I used to work at Sportsbet, a lot of the time I would start very early, 2-3 a.m. in the morning, and I always remembered like the way you walked in, like
really,
you literally used to have like kind of like a bounce in your step, and just kind of like not a smug smile,
probably smug.
Yeah, a smug smile
Pretty
on
smug.
your face. And I would, like, this is before I started drinking coffee. And so I've been up since like 2 or 3 o'clock. And don't get me wrong, like, everyone who walked past me, if they had a smile, I was kind of like, have a look at this prick. But I just always remember you just kind of like bouncing in with this like smug smile. I'm like, have a look at this well-rested. Have a look at this well-rested prick.
This loose unit.
Look at this loose unit just bouncing in at a reasonable work hour, all happy. But
I have a theory.
Okay.
So when we used to work together, I'd take the train into the city.
Yeah.
And in the early days when I got on the train, I'd always see like they looked like, I hate my job, I hate my life, I hate my family, like plugged into their phone, looking down at their phone. And I just thought, firstly, I felt bad for them because I'm like, I'm sad that's your existence. But then secondly, I was like, I don't want that for me.
Yeah.
So when I was on the train on the way in, I'd always listen to like a podcast that was like funny or amusing to me.
Yeah.
Or somehow would like engage me. And I'd always be that guy who'd be like stretching, like a monkey bar, like on the rails. Yeah. So I would never sit. I'd always stand, stretch, listen to something funny. And when I'd come in, I'd be buzzed. Yeah. So I don't know what I looked like, but it's funny if you actually saw that because that's probably the reason why.
Yeah, I had a very different approach to because like a lot of the time because of those ridiculous hours, I would drive and then get an Uber, and I'm sort of walking in, probably looking like one of those guys who hates all of the above, but it wasn't the case. It was just the fact that it's 3 o'clock in the morning and like
you were cooked.
I was absolutely cooked. And like getting the train like home after one of those shifts was it was a lot of the time I would fall asleep and miss my stop. Like it was hell. It was so hard to stay awake, and you get like in the middle of the day. This is just way off topic, but it doesn't matter.
That's good.
You get all sorts of characters on the old Monday to Friday middle of the day train. Yeah. And you would get some absolute creatures on there. and I probably looked worse than all of them, like sleep deprived, just obviously not listening to a funny podcast, listening to probably some aggressive music, just hating life and just trying to stay awake. But not really a great segue out of that, but it's probably a good time to sort of like get into the, you know, you mentioned before that you've done some courses and the work that you're doing in the project. So give us a rundown on what it is that you're doing now and sort of, you know, talk us through. I know Project Rocket is somewhere you've just started with, correct?
Yeah, recently, yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that and sort of the aims behind that for those who don't know it, and sort of, you know, what you're doing and what you hope to get out of it.
Yeah, sure. So what I'd say before I get to what I'm doing now, there's been a bit of a build-up over the last few years. I've helped to run different events for a community group, a couple of community groups actually. One that I'm not part of directly anymore, one that I am still part of. Yeah. And that really gave me a lot of like on-the-ground experience of like doing things that are really confronting and like fucking scary, to be entirely honest for me. And that was like getting up in front of an audience and presenting.
Really?
Yeah, and that, like public speaking, like that's really at the edge of my comfort zone, which is why my work is so stimulating now, because I'm like constantly scared to do it, and that's why it's really good. My mum always said like I had the gift of the gab growing up. Like I would just like chat people's ears off like all the time, but if you put me in front of an audience standing up,
everyone's looking.
I'd freak and I'd freeze.
Like I've got nothing to say.
That's right. That's right. I'll just block up.
Yeah.
So doing this like volunteer not-for-profit experience, it was all just like a labour of love. I wasn't earning any money. And at the time I didn't have a vision for it like, oh, I'm doing this so that I can be XYZ in the future. Yeah. But by doing it, it created this pathway in my mind of, oh, maybe I should do this.
Yeah, right.
So that's kind of what gave me some like experience on the periphery before my friend's passing and before I started taking active steps towards what I'm doing now.
I think that, you know, doing these sort of events, while it wasn't for a set purpose to say like, I'm going to do this so I can then jump into that. But did you think like, if I do these, I might get, something might come out of it. Like I might get a thought about what to do next, or, you know, or were you just like, I'm just going to do these and then...
Well, I would say,
will be?
Yeah. Well, initially I just did it because I was like, I'm drawn to the community here. I'm drawn to the process. It feels fun. Yeah. I didn't have any strong reason. But then the second I started doing it, I'm like, oh, I feel really stimulated. I feel really alive doing this. Like maybe there's something here. Maybe this can be a professional path for me. So initially it was all just pie in the sky stuff. I'm like, cool, seems fun. I'm open to new things, new people. But very quickly, as I grounded myself in it, I'm like, there's really something here for me. Like, you know, I was thinking about it during my work days. I was thinking about it before I was going to bed. I was chewing my partner's ear off about it and doing her absolute head in. Yeah, honestly, I mean, I still do. She's very patient. But yeah, so that was like really, that's how I got like the runs on the board, like unofficially, but at least in my own experience, to like set me up to take those steps that I took last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, incredible. So how long after that did Project Rocket come into it?
So the path since my friend passed, about a week after she passed, and then 3 weeks after she passed, I did 2 programs with 2 companies, and I work for both of them now. Yeah. Neither of them are Project Rocket, but I'll come back to that. Yeah. So that was the middle of 2020. Yeah. And then professionally, things started to crystallize late 2020 with these jobs. I handed in my notice for my old job early 2021. And then I started those jobs and they trickled through a few months ago. So really the way they came about is like once I got one, it's almost as though it sort of legitimized me in that space, sorry. Yeah, exactly. It's that chain reaction domino effect. Like once I got one, I had a bit of a stronger foothold to put myself forward to another one and be like, hey, I'm actually like a candidate of some merit. I'm not just some guy who's worked in sport his whole life and been pigeonholed by that. I'm like, hey, I've done all this volunteer stuff. I'm actually linked with this company, and that seemed to give me a stronger foothold, because going back a few years, like I've been shooting for this on and off for a couple of years, and I've definitely failed a lot, missed a lot of jobs, missed out on getting interviews, missed a job when I've interviewed, and it's because I didn't have that full repertoire of skills and experience. So
it's like an unorthodox resume. Like it's not, I sort of touched on it before about like what I want to do with sort of like content stuff. Like it's not like here's a piece of paper. It's just like, here's a USB. Like, you have to sort of create, a resume that fits for that field of what you want to jump into.
That's right. Yeah. There's no like working at Sportsbet. Like, there's no specific way that you can get in there. I just had periphery skills and knowledge on the experience. Same as working in anti-bullying org. There's not like an anti-bullying degree at university I could have done. It just sort of happened through, like, by virtue of me having all this experience on the side that kind of pieced together and was relevant.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's kind of funny how it all came together.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, get into those. Get into sort of all those companies and sort of what they do.
Sure.
I know I'd be curious to know, and I feel like a lot of people probably would be too, because I feel like a lot of people are probably similar. They're probably similar in the mindset where where they want to do something, but it's also like maybe they don't really know. So you talked about the fact that, you tried and you failed. This will give people a little bit of a
pathway almost.
A little bit of a pathway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely there were some failures along the way, but what's kind of worked for me recently is the places I've landed at. So Project Rocket's one of them. They're been around, I should say, have been around for about 15 odd years.
Yeah.
Anti-bullying, anti-cyberbullying organisation that are also into youth empowerment and social empowerment. So what we do is we go out to schools. We go to year to 3 to 12 students across Australia, based in Victoria, but it's across Australia. Yeah. And we present a slate of different workshops primarily to students, but there's also to educators, to parents, and the two CEOs, Lucy and Ro, are unbelievable. They've both got an Order of Australia. They're both like
incredible story. Yeah.
Big players in the game, and yet they're so humble and down to earth, easy to get along with. And that culture just like filters through the company. Yeah. So it's an awesome place to be, like really well supported. Yeah. I've gone off topic a bit though. So they also do like keynote speeches. Mm-hmm. So there's like a mixed bag of things that are offered. There's face-to-face workshops. There's online webinars. And Project Rocket also have Project Rocket TV, which is a YouTube channel, heaps of free educational content talking about, just really confronting uncomfortable topics for young people to talk about. Like it could be consent, it could be sending nudes, it could be anything. Like they really lift the veil, or we really lift the veil on topics that people avoid.
Parents and teachers probably avoid.
Yeah, and probably don't know what to say about them. Yeah. Because it's very hard without like specific training on it.
Mm-hmm. Do you find some of that stuff that is confronting when you deliver it, because you can kind of see that maybe not people are uncomfortable visibly, but like you can tell there's something going on up here when you're talking about this stuff, which is really difficult to really touch on.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, when I'm presenting, sometimes you can feel the energy in the room. Like maybe a school's just gone through a specific incident in that year level. We're presenting on a topic that's related to it, and you can feel an energy change. You can feel it's awkward for some or confronting for others, or we say a specific thing and it really clicks with a young person and they'll share and they'll talk about it. And it's very hard to like need to know our place, because ultimately we want to respect and acknowledge the individual if they're disclosing something, but it's very important that we're delicate about that and that we bring it back to the group. So that's within the audience, within me as well. Sometimes when I'm presenting on content, it takes me back to my childhood and my past, and I think about my experiences related with that. And that's challenging. But at the same time, that's a real point of power, because it helps me to connect with younger people when I can put myself in their shoes and they can put themselves in my shoes.
How much do you share of yourself in these discussions? Because I mean, obviously there is a real fine line between, everyone has the right to their own privacy, and, but I feel like if you share enough about, what you may have gone through, it does sort of engage with them and helps them, understand that this isn't just a guy who's just coming in trying to tell me how to feel when he doesn't know anything about me or what I've gone through.
Yeah. And look, that's actually a really good segue, because with Project Rocket, I do bring some of my personal story and experiences into it. Just naturally, that happens. Yeah. But we have more like generalized or specific content that's unrelated to me that we'll use as a company. The place that I do that more, where I bring in a lot more of my lived experience, personal experiences with Batyr.
Yeah.
So they're Batyr. Sometimes people pronounce it wrong. And they're a mental health preventative organization by young people for young people.
Okay.
Their logo is an elephant, and the concept is that they talk about the elephant in the room, which is mental health, and then things beyond that. And so if Project Rocket, I'm a presenter, so I present our content, their content.
Yeah.
At Batyr, I'm a speaker, so I'm sharing my lived experience through my mother, through my friend, and through myself. So like from childhood to now, like what's happened to me, where am I at now, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So ultimately, I'm sharing my lived experience of mentally ill health as a family member, friend, and carer. So that's where I'm able to bring out a lot more of myself. At Project Rocket, it's more I'm adopting what we agree as a company we want to deliver. At Batyr, I'm very independent. I'm literally just sharing my story.
Yeah. Probably a difficult question, but
Please.
there's two different types of content delivery there.
Yeah.
Not saying one is better than the other, but do you find a particular one works for you more in terms of what you can get in or how you can really lock into an audience?
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer. I think both have a lot of merit. And to be entirely honest, I'm quite fresh to both companies and both roles, and I'm fresh to this like style of delivery or these styles of delivery.
Yeah.
So I haven't really like delineated between the two. I really do think both have a place. I'm very comfortable, like we spoke about earlier before this, like I'm an open book, you're an open book. I'm really comfortable talking about myself.
Yeah.
The delicate thing for me is that I don't want to speak about my mother or my friend and share their story. I need to share my story from my point of view. Yeah. So that's the one area I need to be careful when I'm talking about myself or disclosing things.
Yeah.
When it comes to Project Rocket, though, yeah, it's like tried and tested stuff that's been created by Lucy Rowe and like the team beneath them. That's like amazing content for me to deliver. So I think there's a lot of merit to both. One, I can fully be myself. Yeah. Another one is like tried and tested, proven, amazing track record and things that I really connect with and agree with, but I didn't create the content.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of like, I feel like the idea would be a mix of both.
Yeah.
Doing something that's tried and tested and like ideally it could be like scientifically proven, and then I can bring a snippet in of my personal flavor, personal experience.
Yeah, I guess it is a real... I can just think back to what I would have been like at school when you had someone come to present. A lot of the time, like, and I dropped out of high school. I was a shithead in high school. Like, if someone came to present at like in front of the whole school or whatever, I'd be like, oh, here we go. I would not take in anything. Like, it wouldn't matter who it was. Like, whether it was someone I was interested in, that's just me. Like, and I don't know what it was about. I really did actually struggle with like school. I was a clown. Like, I was one of those kids who couldn't focus. Like, if I saw someone like, flicking a pen out the corner of my eye, I'd be like, look at that. Like, I just couldn't lock in and engage. And so like, to try and listen to, say, someone like you coming to speak, nothing against you or anyone, I just would never engage, never focus, never take almost anything out of it.
And we come up against that. Yeah. Like, that does happen. Like, if I go to a school of 100 year 7 boys, naturally there's going to be some who are going to play up, not want to connect. They're going to want to be cool, going to want to be with their mates. I was also that person. Yeah. I was a rebellious class clown as well in school. I had issues with authority. I was the same. So what we try to do is, when I'm presenting, it's not I'm just presenting and orating to them. We're facilitating. So we're feeling the energy in the room. We're crowd controlling. Yeah. We're trying to acknowledge different parts of the room. We're trying to engage the quiet pockets and the louder pockets, the alphas and people who might be more introverted or shy. And we use that with different techniques. There's different learning styles. So we'll engage the audience to contribute as well. We'll break up the energy with different icebreakers. We'll present the information being read to or presented on like a whiteboard or projector screen. So we try to reach and access as many people as we can in the audience, so that we can have the biggest impact possible. But that's not always possible. Sometimes people are unwilling to participate, And it's really just a matter of how can we deal with this in the most effective way to benefit the group and to have the biggest impact.
So you've spoken about those two projects. Is there anything else that you're involved in and working on as well? I know you said that you did a course with another company that you're involved with now.
Yeah, that's right. So they're called Mental Health First Aid Australia. So if you think about physical first aid or providing first aid, which is a pretty common short course a lot of people do, this is the mental health equivalent. Now, don't quote me on the dates, I'll get it wrong. But yet again, company's been around a long time, 20 years, 25 years or so. Super legit, world-renowned, super evidence-based. The founder, CEO's got an Order of Australia yet again. So they're really established in this country and internationally. And so I did a 2-day course with them 3 weeks after my friend passed. Yeah. And this course is to become a mental health first aider. What they are is a person in their workplace, community or sports club or any other group. And they're an intermediary between a person who may have a mental health issue or illness and seeking professional help. So they're that middle person. So you could be a family member, a friend, anyone. And what you do is you learn different skills and a bank of knowledge for how to approach a situation which can be really quite delicate or quite confronting or quite foreign. Yeah. And a lot of the content is around anxiety, depression, substance use, and psychosis, and what to do in a situation when that arises in someone else. Yeah. And there's a bunch of different skills around that about making sure that you're safe and they're safe, giving them a space to share openly and listening actively and listening empathetically, and then giving support, so pointing them in the right direction of someone who can help them, whether that's a professional service or another sort of service. So when I was doing this 2-day course, I was thinking like I really could have used this information 10 years earlier with my friend when she was facing her battles and when I would freeze up in the moment. So doing that 2-day course, something really landed with me as I was still going through the grief of losing my friend. And skipping forward towards the end of the year, I connected with a person who was an instructor who delivered the course. Yeah. And I thought, this is a really great way for me to segue into the mental health world because it's a really challenging world to enter if you don't have a clinical background. Yeah. Or at least historically, it's been really challenging. And I don't have a clinical background. I've been a sport guy and a numbers guy. Yeah. So, it clicked with me and I connected with it. And then, skip forward. I got lucky. I made my own luck and Mental Health First Aid Australia took me on to do their 5-day course to be an instructor. Yeah. Became an instructor. And now I'm not employed by them, but I'm effectively a licensee. So I can deliver their course and their material through my own business or through other businesses. And I'm actually connected with 2 businesses now. One's called Genu. They work, basically they help anyone who is disadvantaged. So it could be the elderly, it could be someone with a disability, et cetera, et cetera. And I also work with Workplace Interventions, which is like a workplace OH&S organisation. So I deliver the Mental Health First Aid Australia course through them to their clients as like a contractor. Yeah, right. So technically I've got 4 jobs. You're a busy man. Yeah. I am and I'm not, to be honest. Like, I am busy, but I reckon when people tell you they're busy, they're not as busy as they say that. And when people say they got nothing on, I reckon they got more on than they say.
Yeah, 100%. What's the saying? It's like, it's never as good. It's never as good as it seems. It's never
as bad as it seems. Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're finishing each other's sentences.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hasn't happened for me in a while.
And no, it's like now that I am someone for the first time in my life who's almost like a freelancer. I don't know what you'd even call me, but I've got multiple jobs on the go. Yeah. And in the past, I've always looked at people like that who are doing that. I'm like, how the hell do you find the time to do it? Yeah. But in reality, like, it's very achievable, and it completely depends on like how much effort you have to put in with certain jobs, how many hours, how you can balance out and manage your time.
And it really can actually suit you a lot more. Like you sort of, ultimately, like the way I look at it is like people who are sort of like maybe commission based. Mm-hmm. Like I always looked at that as going like, I don't know how people can like live like that. Like, cause you're literally like, if you ain't working, you ain't
living by the sale.
You ain't eating.
Yeah.
And I prefer to eat and sometimes don't like to work. So sometimes I'm like, that life is just not for me. But ultimately, as I more and more, I do think that less structured 9 to 5, working for the man.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, you could be a businessman or you could be the business
Man.
So
Jay-Z, shout out.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I hope he doesn't sue me for that. One question.
Do you reckon he'll hear this podcast? I heard he's a big fan.
I no. So,
No? You don't reckon?
No. Well, unfortunately I found out via iTunes that, you know, what ratings I had in certain countries. I had 1 rating in America.
Was it Jay-Z?
I don't know who it was. I hope it wasn't Jay-Z because he gave me a 1 out of 5. So someone in America has just tuned in, wasn't happy with what they heard, and just gave me a 1 out of 5 and sort of just took off into the sunset. So my launch into America is a little bit slower than what I would hope, but that's okay.
Slow burn, still a burn.
One thing I do want to know is that obviously that course that you took was still very, very soon after your friend had passed away, and I'd be interested to know how heavy that sat with you while you were sort of sitting there and taking the information in. Like I can only sort of think about what I would be like in that situation, and it would be heavy for me. And even presenting, it would still be incredible. It would. I think it would always sit incredibly heavy with me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, I mean, the saying goes that time heals wounds. Like, it definitely doesn't fully heal the wound, and I can't paper over certain cracks, but over time things have improved. So doing these courses and these workshops straight after were super heavy and confronting, and, like, I definitely had emotional breakdowns, like, you know, during and after at times, and it needed support from my partner to get through it. But the beautiful thing for it was really cathartic for me. It was almost like non-therapy therapy. With Batia, the weekend workshop I did a week after she passed was about sharing your story and developing your story. And, you know, I had a full breakdown when I first tried to share the story because I was like, I haven't said these words out loud to someone who's not like my partner. Yes, so difficult and like so foreign and so surreal to like be in that space and be like, oh my God, this is real. Yeah. So I still hadn't really wrapped my head around it, which is why it was so challenging. Even now when I present on some topics that are sort of related in that mental health, suicide prevention sphere, you know, I can feel like a pang in my heart or something or a little lump in my throat.
Yeah.
But over time, I'm able to manage it better and better. And really, it's just been, since she passed, it's been a steady progression of just being able to function better as a human being. Like, for a while there, like, I was dysfunctional. I was like, I don't really want to see people or do things. Yeah. I felt guilty for any sort of joy I had in my life, especially with all the people suffering with COVID at the same time. I was just like, I had this guilt that, to me, has kind of proven to be irrational guilt. Like, I'm allowed to feel happy and okay. We all are. We're all entitled to that. But I didn't allow myself to feel that for, you know, a set period of time. But that's grown and progressed over time. And I'm now in, I don't even know what stage of grief it would be. Acceptance. Like, you know, I feel like I've been in that stage of grief for a long time where I can see what happened. A part of me, I don't agree with what happened, but I can accept that, like, it has happened and I can move forward with my life while still remembering and like holding on to that. Yeah.
It is sort of crazy how actually saying, you know, certain words out loud, like you think about it all the time, but then when you're actually physically saying it, like, it just becomes, it's almost impossible. Like, I had a cousin who I was, you know, really close to and meant the world to me. Like, he passed away from cancer, you know, a number of years ago now. And, you know, the same week, you know, where he passed away, it's his birthday a few days before, you know, in the same week. And that week is just a total write-off for me. Every time I talk about it, I just break down. And it doesn't matter how many years pass. It's just, and I don't know if that'll ever change because I don't like to speak about it. Like, I don't like to talk about it to people because I know exactly what it does to me. And like sharing experiences, but I feel like ultimately I probably should because it's like, you know, I sort of box it up for most of the year until it gets to that time where the box, you know, comes out and I can't avoid it. And it's just, it's incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it is. Look, it is healthy to talk about in any way, shape or form you're comfortable with. And whether that's consistently talking about it with people you know or even people you don't know who are separated to it, or if you need it to all come out in, 3 monthly, 6 monthly, annual sessions, like whatever you need to do to be able to acknowledge it, cope with it and move forward with it, that's what you got to do. And there's no one rule that fits all.
Yeah.
So it's just what you need to do for you.
So when we were chatting, before we, when we were putting the wheels in motion for this, you outlined, a number of things that, work for you and you sort of really love doing, and that you think is, extremely beneficial. Did you want to get into those and sort of, what they are and, why you think they work for you or why you think they could potentially work for other people?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, look, all I can really speak to is my personal experience. I can't give advice, but hopefully something here is useful to someone. For me, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is like these sharing circles that I've always been part of and that they created this path for me in my career. But beyond that, and without any connection to my career, to have like a shared space I can go to with friendly and familiar faces to talk about my own issues, anything that comes up in life, relationships or career or spirituality. It could be anything, anything in the world, whatever you want. But even more importantly for me was seeing other people talk about their issues and then I could find resonance with them.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much that, it would just open space in my mind for other things. Like it would really calm my nervous system. I'd feel like a sense of connection to the people. And ultimately it was finding a sense of community.
Yeah.
That's probably what was the most powerful element to me. I'm not having superficial conversations with people that are really surface level. Mm-hmm. And that's something that as Australians we can do a lot. We're really friendly and really good at being like, hey, how are you? Good, and you? What are you studying? What are you doing for work? Boom, boom, boom. And then beyond that, not a huge amount of depth and a lot of chats. So to go to a group like this where it's the opposite, I might meet someone for the first time.
And you're sharing like both of you are sharing incredibly intimate like stuff and it's just sort of like bouncing back and forth.
That's it. And you're co-creating it together. You're like sharing profound things. People have shared things to me they probably haven't told their own family. And I just met them 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing way to like really get to know someone and really connect with them. So for me, that's been such a big part of my healing through different issues I had in my childhood or with my family and more recently with my friend. So having that sense of community and having a place to go to really helps. Whether I'm a fly on the wall, I'm actively sharing or I'm running the event, it doesn't really matter. I'm part of a co-creation of like a really meaningful space. So that's definitely one thing that served me really well, like finding that community. And I really love sharing circles. I think it's like a very deliberate, sacred space that you can enter into with people. And it's really, if it's well facilitated and if it's cultivated strongly, you can really go places. So that's one. Yeah. In terms of like my own self-care strategies and techniques, like a lot of people in modern society, like I can get glued to technology. I can stay indoors and be tempted by a bevy of things. So for me, and like I love sport. So for me, like going out, playing sport, whether it's individual sport, team sport, I love squash, tennis, soccer. They're all really amazing for me to release any built up stress or tension. Also just going for like a walk in a quiet side street, going for a run, going to the beach, like listening to the ocean, being in the ocean, being in nature, pretty much as any way that I can be physically active and or outdoors and or away from like the busyness and hecticness of like the Western civilized world that we live in Australia. So that's definitely something that calms my nervous system. And it just connects me to something bigger than myself instead of just getting lost in like the rat race of life that I can get lost in. And I do get lost in. This is a release from that reality.
Would you say that, and I was going to say like switch off, but that's probably not a good way to describe it. Would you find that doing that detaches your mind from the rat race life, where you've got these X number of stresses and you're thinking about this, you're thinking about that. You take yourself out of that, you're going down, playing squash, and your mind is just completely detached from that? Or are you someone who just can't sort of, because some people just can't, take themselves away from it sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I am pretty good at switching off most of the time. I almost feel like doing these things, instead of me switching off or detaching, it's more like I'm switching on and I'm attaching to something else.
Yeah.
So, look, I am a bit of an overanalyzer. I'm pretty ambitious. I'm quite a deep thinker with these things. So I can get lost in my own head of thoughts, just trying to make sense of things, intellectualize things, and probably that common thing that a lot of men do, fix things. So...
Not this guy.
Not that guy?
I do not fix anything.
You're not a fixer?
As you can see, by looking in the studio, we have a lot of paintings and everything put up.
Well, I'm not necessarily successful in fixing, but I damn well have tried in the past.
Yeah.
But now more and more I'm trying to not fix, not give advice.
Yeah.
I'm more just trying to just be embodied with what I'm doing. You know, it's a massive cliche of living in the present, but like, it's amazing how rich my reality is when I'm just doing one thing at a time and focusing on it.
Would you say that's like staying in your lane? Would you, or am I?
Yeah, it could be construed that way. It could also be construed as going out of my lane.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really complex. I just said that.
That is. Yeah.
That's a spanner in the works.
That is a spanner in the works. I feel like
We're driving on a highway. There's 5 lanes, and I'm kind of just darting between them.
we're on the autobahn. It's going way too quick. But I feel like it's like, you know, let's say, you know, you say you don't want to fix things. I feel like that is literally, you know, kind of staying in maybe not your lane or staying in a lane where you're like, yep, now I can see, my peripheral can see things here, but I'm just going to stay here because this works, you know, better for these reasons.
Yeah. No, I definitely think there's something to that, to like doing things that just feel right for me or benefit others. You know, not overextending myself into an area that just doesn't feel right or doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
So that could be construed as staying in your lane.
Yeah.
You got me. You won me over.
I did. Mate, it doesn't matter how long it takes. I always win. I win everyone over. That's why the podcast is so successful. Look, let's get into sort of what's next. I know we've spoken a lot about, you know, sort of past experiences and in the present, but you mentioned you're an ambitious guy. So what do you see as next for you professionally? And I know that's probably a hard question to answer because you're still sort of
fresh
into the mental health space and all that. But, you know, is there anything that you sort of want to go after or sink your teeth into?
Yeah. So in one way it is complex because I'm fresh to the space, but I'm still really wide-eyed because I'm so fresh.
Yeah.
So I'm so happy with where I'm at right now. And it's really important for me to like bank that and like take that win and like sit with that. I don't want to always just be trying to climb for more. But at the same time, I do have a gentle eye on the future. I do have ambitions and desires for things. I think internally at Project Rocket, like I love being a presenter and going to schools, but something that I would like to do in the future as well is I'd love to be able to work with the internal team and manage them, because in past jobs I've got management experience.
Yeah.
And I do really love working with adults as well and trying to bring the best out of them. So if that's something I can do in the future, I'd love to do that within Project Rocket. So a bit more of the internal work, not just external.
Yeah.
With Batir, I'm a speaker. So what you can do with that is really anything. Like, I don't know how far I could go with it, but it's possible in the future I could become a keynote speaker for a certain organization. For me, a dream would be to like blend together the worlds of mental health and sport. I've always worked in sport, but in a space in sport I didn't want to be in. So if I can like bind those two worlds together somehow, which I can completely envision. I don't know what it'll look like yet, but I can envision that.
Absolutely. That's
a dream. Yeah.
It really is and it is sort of, I guess it's almost like the whole sport kind of thing is very similar. The sport mindset is very similar to, you know, our sort of mindset as Australians. You know, we sort of cut down, you know, people who are, you know, the tall poppy syndrome, which we were talking about before and that whatnot. And, you know, if you're an athlete, right, and you sort of touch on, you know, you're like, I'm not doing well right now. You only have to go on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram to see 500 shitty comments from people saying, come work in the real world, you're a professional athlete. Like, what the hell do you know about struggle? But, like, if you ask most athletes, especially in, like, the US, most professional athletes will have a sports psychologist either on retainer or they see one, a couple of times a year.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's extremely important, and I think it's easy for us, especially in Melbourne. We like to call ourselves the sporting capital of the world. We don't look at athletes as like human beings that go through struggle, but they do. They really do. And more that's coming to the fore with different stories and experiences people are having. So for me, yeah, that's two worlds that I really love, and I can see a synergy between them. And I think that as the years develop and mental health as a concept ingrades itself in society more, and it gets more systematic support and more government support, and maybe it platforms into other areas like suicide prevention or other things, I can really see a pathway and a connection there through sport. So I've got this loosely held belief that I'm going to do something that taps both in together. And I've actually already got some things in the works that I can do with the companies I'm at, whereby I can sort of upskill and access these spaces. So I'm slowly working on it. Yeah, it's definitely in the back of my mind.
Yeah, well, mate, that's it's incredible to hear about the shift that you went through. I think it's I know you said before you didn't want to be put onto a pedestal, but it's not often that you do see someone sort of in this age, in their sort of a career, jump away from, a space or a job that, is, especially when you talk about the ties you had as a kid, that is, so interesting. It's something you love to jump into something, relatively fresh and relatively new, but to do that and then sort of just see how many different branches you can take out of it. And it was absolutely great hearing about that. And I honestly wish you nothing but success into whatever those branches you jump out on.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. It's, I'm living in an expansive world now. There's a lot of things I can do, and I feel very excited about it.
That's it. All right. All the best with everything.
Thank you for having me, Christopher.